they give a false sense of security and certainty that lets people declare victory when they've built a product that's total crap. Because you can say, well, we built all the requirements in the PRD, like, check, finished our OKR, mark that one a success.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Product and Cake. We have again a special guest here and my all-loved co-host, Gonche. How are you?
Hello, I'm really good. Today the weather is not as great as I expected it to be. I think it's going to rain soon, but I'm really excited for the episode that we are going to record. I'm really excited to have Jacob here. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm good. Yeah, we'll bring some California sunshine for you, even if it's rainy over where you are.
Fantastic. Jacob is more or less living the dream because surfing, from what I saw on your LinkedIn profile, you are surfing the startup and the corporate world, being a founder, then for 6 years, director of product management at Google. And now since 3 years, you left Google basically to found Relay.app. One of the hottest AI agent tools out there.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, we're in the space.
Definitely a very interesting space and a super nice tool. And we are so happy to learn about how you did it. How's your perspective on product management and what maybe good and bad parts you took from Google into your startup. I'm very curious to learn all of that. But before that, I would like to start with our usual check-in question. And I like to ask you, which is your least favorite fruit?
That's a good one because you usually start with what's your favorite, least favorite. Okay.
That is too easy.
My least favorite fruit. I'm going to use a technical fruit, which is a tomato. And it is my least favorite fruit because I really don't like the watery texture of it when raw, and it's in so many things. I'm okay if it's cooked into a sauce, but for some reason the texture and the seeds just doesn't work for me.
I see. Yeah, good one. I thought it's because of the somehow wrong classification, but also good.
No, that doesn't bother me so much. Just the mouthfeel.
I see. What about you, Gonche?
I think mango. The reason is I think it's too sweet for me. I only like mangoes when I use it as a sweetener in a shake or a smoothie. Otherwise, it's too sweet for me. And it's overly used in a lot of products. Like, why do we need a mango yogurt? I don't get that.
Okay, fair.
Because we love the sweet taste of mango.
Fair. How about you, Paul?
So for me, it is definitely pomegranate. So Granatapfel in German. It is tasty. I like it. But whenever I have one, it is so a mess to get to the fruit. And then I have the seeds all inside of my teeth. And it's not fulfilling what it is promising.
Maybe I can make pomegranate juice for you one day. That is amazing.
Yeah, we'll take it. Can I make a mango juice?
No.
Okay, but before we go into fruit sales, let us dive into this episode.
Yeah, exactly. So, Jacob, for those who don't know you, would you explain what you're doing in 1 or 2 sentences?
Yes. What I'm doing right now is I'm the founder of Relay.app, and I'll interpret your question in 2 ways. I'll tell you what Relay.app is doing and then what I am personally doing all day, every day. What Relay.app is, it's an AI agent platform that enables non-technical users to create AI agents that do work on their behalf. For example, you could create an AI agent that parses out the invoice information from a set of PDFs and adds it to a Google Sheet. You could build an agent that automatically drafts LinkedIn posts for you based on YouTube videos. You could build an AI agent that automatically synthesizes your customer feedback from the past week, et cetera, all using our platform with no kind of technical skills or AI background required. That's what the company is doing. And what I am personally doing is I'm the founder. My background is in product, but we actually have a very strong product engineering and design team. And so I do 2 things. I do marketing, and I do user research. And often there's a tight intersection between those two, because the cycle I go through is every day I meet with somewhere between 5 and 10 users or customers. They could be anywhere in their journey, from just having signed up for the product, or they could be an already paying customer for months. I help them set up their workflows. I learn about what they're doing with the product, where they see AI as impactful in their business. And I use that for two things. One is I use that to improve the product experience and identify all the points of friction that they ran into and all the other opportunities we have to better guide them to build the AI assistance they need. And then second, our entire marketing strategy is content marketing, where I share in particular on LinkedIn examples of how people are using AI in their businesses to see if it's relevant for others. Because there are so many people who've heard that, oh, AI is a thing I should use in my business, but they don't know exactly how to do so. And so that's basically my job. I meet with customers. I identify use cases where AI is really helping them. I publish those use cases. I don't, publish the customer information themselves, but I publish kind of an abstracted version of the use case. I get more people who are interested in that use case. Those then become new customers, and that's sort of the cycle that we're in right now.
So it makes definitely sense to check out the videos. I also watched already a few, and also for technical users, basically, I am able now to execute custom code with this AI input and push all of that to GitHub. And then Vercel is kicking in and do other cool stuff. So a very nice tool.
We have a couple of treats for the technical users as well. Yes.
Yeah, nice. And can you quantify a little bit Relay.app and the team you are working with? So how many people are there?
We're a 9-person team. We have 5 engineers, 2 designers, a product person, and myself. And though my background is in product, I'm mostly playing a marketing, user research, support role, in addition to being HR and finance and all the operational elements of the business. Luckily, those are simple for us at our small scale. We're globally distributed. So I'm based in San Francisco. We have one other person based in the Bay Area as well, in California. We have 2 employees that are on the East Coast of North America, one in Canada, one in Connecticut. And then we have 5 people in Europe. 2 in the Netherlands, 2 in Switzerland, and 1 in Spain. And if you're interested, I can tell you how that company configuration came to be. But yeah, we're a lean product and engineering focused team, with me as the sort of token non-technical person on the team.
Nice. I meet so many people sitting in a well-established company like you did maybe before as director of product management at Google. And then you did the step into becoming a founder and do your own thing in this super nice remote, small team, fast-paced environment. So what was your motivation to do that? Isn't Google the one that should give you all the resources to do whatever you want? I mean, from our European scared picture of how great Google is.
Maybe 2 points there. First is, I never thought of myself as a big company person, because the way I arrived at Google was that Google had acquired my previous startup. So my background is, at one point I was an academic researcher in AI. I dropped out of a PhD program to start a company. Google acquired the company, spent 6 years at Google, and then I went back to a startup. And so my decision-making process was a little bit different than someone for whom Google was their first job out of school, or had only worked in large corporate jobs and then took the leap to a startup. That's a bigger, scary leap. For me, it was doing a startup again, was going back home, so to speak, to my natural environment. I always felt a little unnatural at Google. But fundamentally, there were 2 reasons. Maybe I'll give you 3 reasons. 2 kind of obvious, and then 1 maybe counterintuitive reason. 3 reasons why I left Google to join a startup. The first and most important reason was pace of personal learning and growth. So when I started Relay, I was 32 years old, and I had been at Google for 6 years. I had a large team, and I could look ahead at my next 20 years at Google and be like, yeah, I kind of know what this would look like. Like, maybe my team will grow in size, maybe my title will increase, but fundamentally I knew what the job would look like to work as a leader in a large organization. And I was like, I'm too young to just do that for the rest of my career. I felt like I still had so much more to learn and so many more areas to grow in. The number 1 decision I was making in my career was what is going to give me the most learning and the most growth. And based on my previous experience at a startup, I knew that nothing could compare from a learning and growth perspective to the experience of starting a company. And that's along a couple dimensions. One is you're responsible for every function: HR, finance, sales, marketing, customer support, customer success. So at the very least, you're going to gain a deeper appreciation for every function that goes into delivering a business. And then second, when you have to start something from nothing, there is no inertia. There is no existing process. There is no existing user base. There is no existing customer to lean on. And so you have to figure it all out for yourself. So that was number one, learning and growth. I don't think that's a surprising or controversial answer. The second was, I was really excited about this particular product mission. How can we build an AI assistant that works on your behalf across all your tools? And I didn't feel that that was possible to achieve at Google for two reasons. The first is simply pace of innovation. It's so hard to develop something new. It's so hard to be on the cutting edge of technology. And the reason companies move slowly is not because they don't have enough resources. It's because they have too many resources. Because there are too many people that have to be involved in any decision. Like, I mean, look at companies that are coming up now. Lovable is hitting 20 million AR with 15 people. Like, it's not, the problem is not that you don't have enough people to write the code. This always struck me as such a backwards line of reasoning at big companies. Like, oh, I need more people to move faster. Whereas in my experience, more people only makes you move slower. The way you move faster is you eliminate constraints. You take more risk. You never add more people to move faster. And so in a world that was moving so fast, I didn't see how it would be possible to do that in a world where I would need 20, 30, 40, 50 people to approve anything that we were doing, either implicitly or explicitly. And then second, the kind of product we were building that works across your tools is very hard for any individual tool builder to build. So, I was the product lead for Gmail for many years. When you were the product lead for Gmail, we would spend hours agonizing over like every little pixel in how do you click archive and how do you click delete and where's the reply button exactly? And then we'd go to customers and be like, oh, look at this new, archive button that we added to the top level of the inbox view. And they'd be like, yeah, whatever. Archiving mails is fine. But like, how do I get Gmail to work better with Salesforce and ClickUp and run.com? We're like, I don't know. Good luck. Use the API. Because it's just natural that when you're responsible for a product surface, you think about the things that are in your control. And so I didn't think Google was a place for those two reasons why I could build this product I really wanted to build. And the third was, and this is, I think, going to surprise the European mind the most, is I felt like it was too risky to stay at Google. So most people say, oh, you're leaving a big, stable, large company. That's so safe to stay at a big, stable, large company. So risky to leave and start your own thing. And I see it totally the opposite way. In a modern career, the only thing that makes you future-proof is a variety of skills and experiences. And the ability to show that you can dynamically adapt to new situations. You build a network across many different types of companies and experiences. And so I mean, staying at Google is risky for two reasons. One is Google has laid people off. We've never laid people off. And so there is sort of a mismatch in risk where people think, oh, the big company's so safe. It's maybe not as safe as it was forever. And a well-funded startup that's a great team is actually safer than you might think. Like well-funded, really high-quality teams with great products tend to achieve a pretty good outcome, and that are less subject to sort of the randomness of what team you're on. And the second is, imagine, Paul, you're hypothetically hiring someone to be an engineer at your company. One profile is they worked at Google for 12 years. You know nothing about what they did. You know nothing about them other than they worked at Google for 12 years because everything they worked on was internal. You don't have access to any of their promotion data or anything like that. You might have a couple of references, but those people all still at work at Google, so you can't really talk to them because it would be a violation of your candidate's privacy. The other person worked at Google for 4 years. And then over the remaining 8 years, worked at 3 different startups of varying sizes and shapes. One was a seed startup that didn't work out. Another was a Series A startup that's doing really well. Another was a Series C startup that is now going public. Which resume would you rather hire for your own startup or for your own Series C company or your own Series B company or even for your own public company? I would, of course, take the latter resume because it shows a diversity of skills, a diversity of experiences, a hunger to go learn new things and try new things. A mindset that means they're not going to get too comfortable in one place. And so that's why I think people's risk calculation is totally backwards. Like, yeah, of course, you're going to make less money next year working at a startup than working at Google, for sure. And so if you're in a family situation where you have a certain mortgage or certain payments for your kids where you need that high stable income, then yeah, you can stay at a big company. You might even still want to diversify within big companies so that you build a broader network and get a broader set of experiences. But if you're looking at the long arc of a typical career, which is 30, 35, 40 years, it's way safer to build a diversity of skills and experiences. And so this is something I think people get totally backwards when they're making career decisions, especially, I lived in Switzerland for a year. I have many close friends and colleagues in Europe, some of whom have joined me at Relay. And I've noticed the mindset even more strongly there. It's like, whoa, so risky to leave, Deutsche Post to go work at a startup.
That's very true. Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly disagree with that way of viewing a modern career. It may have been true, in our parents' generation, but I don't think it's true now.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I 100% also agree with the example that you mentioned with the two CVs. And now looking a little bit back at Relay app and what you're doing there. And you mentioned that you're closer to user research and marketing teams at the moment. I want to ask, if your role disappeared, so if the things that you're doing right now with marketing and with the user research, what would break first if you're not doing that anymore?
It's a good question. I don't think anything would fundamentally break because certainly on the user research side, we have a very capable design, product, and engineering team that will continue to improve the product. Do I think that the insights I get from user research can move us forward faster? For sure. But fundamentally, they'll keep improving the product. I think probably the more critical role I'm playing in the team is marketing. We do have pretty consistent top of funnel through word of mouth and through some of our existing resources. But I am the person that's responsible for putting us on the map and bringing new users in the door. And so I think, I'm about to have my third child. I will disappear for some number of weeks. I don't think anything will break in that time, but our goal is not to stay unbroken. Our goal is to bend the curve and grow exponentially. And so the work that I'm doing is not with an eye towards, would it break if I wasn't doing this marketing today? Would it break if I wasn't doing this user research today? But how can I draw forward one incremental insight that bends the curve for us? How can I draw forward one use case that unlocks a new marketing strategy that could lead to an inflection point in our growth? I'm thinking about it as offense, not my job is offense, not defense in a sports analogy.
Yeah, and that describes very well the founder mode, right? Where you have the broad
everyone needs to be playing
going
offense all the time. But especially me.
Definitely. So when you have maybe a job interview with new joiners, or when you talk with several people on a meetup or something, what's a misconception people have about what you are doing?
Do you mean that in the context of the product that we're building or the experience of working at an early stage startup, or both?
Maybe both.
Yeah. So a misconception about the product we're building, that would only be our fault because we're not telling a good story in marketing. But I think people assume that building an AI agent requires a higher degree of technical aptitude than it actually does. People see it and it looks scary. And if you've never used an automation tool before, and if you've never kind of thought in a structured way before, it can be scary. But I really think it can be accessible to everyone. And that's a barrier that we need to break, AI agent building out of this little niche into something that everyone can use. I really think it has, multi-billion user potential in the same way that a spreadsheet does, but we haven't told that story well enough yet. In terms of the experience at working at a startup, I think there's a misconception that it's all about hours worked. Oh, you have to work 80 hours a week. Oh, you have to work, so many hours. And to be clear, you do need to work a solid number of hours because there's just no redundancy in the system. If there's a customer emergency, like I believe there's a law in Germany that you can't check your work email, or that certain classes of employers can't send work emails after 5 p.m. I mean, that's fundamentally incompatible with a 9-person startup that's serving a global audience. Now, we still, I think, giving people time off and giving people balance is still very important in aggregate, but we need heroics. Like if we're only 9 people supporting, many, many thousands of customers and users, like we're going to need heroics from time to time. So that is part of the expectation, but it's not like you need to be performatively working 80 hours a week. You hear about some of these finance jobs where it's like, oh, you can't leave before your boss leaves because it looks bad that you're not committed enough. And so I think there's a misconception that's all about hours. What I think is true is that the intensity and the pride of what you're building is different from a big company job, where like really, if anything is wrong with the product of the company, everyone on our team feels an extreme sense of responsibility to fix it immediately. And so you likely will not end up working that many more hours than you would at a big company job, but the work will be more intense because you'll be more committed. In my job at Google, I was probably working about 60 hours a week at Google, something like that. But probably 30 of those 60 hours was just sitting in meetings that I had to be in just to be there. Maybe I'd make a comment or two, but mostly I was just there to be there. Maybe 30 is an exaggeration, but lots of meetings at Google, I was just there to be there. And I think that's true in any large corporate environment where we say, we need Paul in this meeting. Otherwise it's not, not all the stakeholders have been there. We need Gotcha in this meeting to kind of approve this decision. Whereas in a startup, I'd say I'm working probably a similar number of hours per week, but every minute I'm working, it's with purpose and with intensity.
Interesting. And also, I think making sure that you have the right people with the similar mindset is quite a challenge. And what is the biggest challenge you're dealing with right now?
The biggest challenge changes frequently.
Also startup mode.
Part of the dynamic nature of the world. The biggest challenge that we're dealing with right now is how can we make the product easy enough to use that anyone, regardless of their technical background, can succeed. So for example, yesterday I met with a gentleman who I believe is in the Netherlands, and they create artisanal kitchen tiles. And they have these really beautiful handcrafted kitchen tiles. And he's the owner of this small business. They do a little bit of light manufacturing, and he wants to use Relay for a variety of things. They want to identify new leads. They typically work with interior designers as partners. He wants to manage his supplier invoicing and his inventory tracking, and he has all these really great use cases that he wants to use AI for. And the product's not yet quite easy enough for him to use it on his own. He's gotten quite far. He's very motivated and very savvy, but it's a product failure that we haven't been able to get him all the way to success yet. And that's our biggest challenge, because that's the kind of person that there are 2 billion of in the world. Every single small business owner needs a tool like the tool that we're building, but I don't want them to need to become AI and automation and workflow experts. They need to be experts in making tiles and making jam and making cakes and doing laser eye surgery, whatever. They need to be an expert in their craft, the craft of their business, and the AI just needs to work for them. And that is the grand challenge that will, unlock a huge degree of additional success for the company if we can crack it.
I think that comes also with a massive challenge of balance feature requirements, right? Because maybe I, as a more tech-savvy person, would like you to double down on the integrated editor and connect that with my GitHub so I can just push it much more easier, while the tile producer never heard about Git at all.
It's a classic product management challenge, which is balancing the needs of different classes of users. It's especially a problem in horizontal products like ours that are used by so many different types of users for so many different things. But this is actually a solvable problem. It's a solvable problem in that it's not that hard to build a UI in which the tile maker will never find the custom code step, but you will. That's a solvable UI challenge that only people who know that they want custom code and need to find it can find it. I totally believe you can have a simple default experience with more advanced capabilities behind menus that others wouldn't even have to be distracted by or find. That's a solvable product problem. It's also a solvable product problem from a roadmap perspective to say 80% of our focus is going to be on improving the experience for the tile maker, But we also recognize that technical users add value to our ecosystem. They build templates that others can adopt. They can often serve as consultants that can help other businesses get up to speed. They can also serve as champions within a company that can improve the adoption and spread of the product. And so that's another thing that, seasoned product managers, I think, are pretty experienced at doing, which is, coming up with sort of a disciplined way to balance the needs of different stakeholders where, yes, we can say almost all of our work goes into making the core product experience easier for non-technical users, but there are a few key unblocking projects for our more advanced users that are going to have, disproportionate impact beyond just making the one coder using the product happier.
When you compare your previous experiences in your previous startup maybe, or also your work at Google, compared to our times since, let's say, 2 years since we discovered ChatGPT, what would you say is an overrated versus an underrated way AI is used in product management?
Overrated, writing PRDs. I think PRDs are stupid. We should never do them. I get it. Like if your company requires you to do it, then yeah, do it. Use ChatGPT to write it. I think it's like that artifact being a standard of the product management craft is like the biggest mistake ever. I can talk more about why I think that's the case. But that's something that I think is overrated, like crafting long set piece product strategies and PRDs. The thing that I think is underrated is synthesizing insights. Synthesizing insights from customer calls, synthesizing insights from user feedback, synthesizing insights from open support issues. Those are the ways that I use the product, that I use our product most to guide our product development.
I was laughing so much when one of the engineers came back to me and said, hey, look, I found this AI that is giving me just 2 bullet points out of this huge product requirement I found in our ticket system. And then I asked the product manager and he said, yes, I find this super nice AI that was building me this full-fledged description. And then you're thinking, wait, maybe this 2 bullet points would be enough already.
That's the joke people are saying, was like, I ask my AI to write a long email, then you ask your AI to summarize the wrong email. Like, what if I just send you the 2 bullet points?
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, I want to understand a little bit better why you don't like PRDs. I agree to some extent, but I want to understand your reasoning.
There's a few things I dislike about them. The first thing I probably dislike most is they give a false sense of security and certainty that lets people declare victory when they've built a product that's total crap. Because you can say, well, we built all the requirements in the PRD, like, check, finished our OKR, mark that one a success. When I have never met a product manager, I've met some really good product managers. I have never met someone who is capable of writing a 20-page document that exactly described upfront the right product for a user. And so it gives you this extreme false sense of security where you're chasing completion on the PRD instead of some requirements that someone invented that almost certainly are wrong, rather than trying to chase success for a user. And second, it creates a way overly static view of product development, which is like, oh, we have these requirements for this feature, we will ship this feature, and then it's done. And in my experience, the first version is only 10% of the work of building a good product. The real magic comes, I'll give you an example. We have an experience in our product by which users can look up recent emails or calendar events. And this can be relevant in a bunch of scenarios. You might want to find a specific email to reference it in a meeting briefing. You might want to find past calendar events to see if I've met Paul and Gotcha before. And our feature totally follows the PRD. There is a capability that a user can look up calendar events and filter them by title, by calendar, by start date, and by end date. It is technically achievable. We have met the requirements. 8 out of 10 users fail to do that in our product today. They fail to do it because the way we've constructed the specific UI for setting up relative dates is you basically have to say, if you want to look for events in the last month, you have to say, events whose start date comes after today minus 1 month. And then events whose start date comes before today. And you can totally see why, from a technical perspective, you end up with that, because that's how the calendar API interprets, date-based querying. But you show that to a tile maker, And he's like, whoa, start date comes after today minus 30 days. That's not how I would think about it. I would think about it as, hey, what's happened in the last month? Show me any events from the last month. Show me any events from the last day, from the last week. And so by building to a PRD and declaring victory because you've met the requirement of giving users the ability to filter calendar by dates, it kind of hits both those negative points. It's given you the false sense of security that you've achieved success that you haven't. And then second, it's taken away the dynamism of this interaction with the user of like, okay, show me, Gotcha, how you're going to show me. Like, this is why I do all these user interviews. Show me how you're going to find the calendar events for the last month. And I see them struggle. With this date picker. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is not nearly good enough. We need to fix this. And I just, whenever I've worked in PRD driven organizations, that type of iteration is not really possible because you're already on to the next PRD. For the next set piece feature that's not going to actually meet the user's needs.
Yeah. For me, whenever I also worked in a company that PRDs were the requirement or the standard operating model, it felt like just dominoes, that you're just going to hit the next one, and just move forward.
And then declare victory.
Without ever...
We've met all of our customers' requirements because we built all the PRDs that we said.
Yeah, without ever looking back at what happened, how's the long-term impact. Yeah, I fully agree. Even though it's not necessarily to be honest, I love documentation. I think documentation is amazing. I love writing documents, even though I'm dyslexic. But yeah, PRD is a little bit.
Yeah, I think documentation is important. People need to know how a thing works, both users and internal. But let's not let the tail wag the dog is an expression we have in English. Like, let's not let our desire for documentation decide what product we're going to build. Like, let's first build the good product and then we can document it and evolve the documentation. And so the way I think about it is and again, I know this is not possible for everyone who's working a PM job in a large company where there are certain requirements of which documents you produce and which project you want. But what I'm saying is at a startup, we never write documents like that. We write one-line descriptions of what a feature is supposed to achieve. We create some mocks. We test those mocks with users. We then can write a document of like, oh, here's the things that didn't quite work, or here are the things that the mocks need to hit next time. And then at some point, we feel the product is succeeding. We're done. And we can write some documentation for our help center.
I would also like to add this perspective of an engineer, because if you get this full-fledged PRD, then you think, oh gosh, I need to have 2 hours of reading, understanding, and then I'm doing it, and then I send here, I'm done. But if you just get this 2-liner and you say, hey, I want to have events from a given period of time, and then I just recently found maybe a script or a tool that gives me the super cool relative date picker, and I came back and say, hey, look, I found this.
Exactly. And very often now in front-end development, you can just type that into your neighborhood Cursor, Windsurf, Claude Code, whatever you're using, and just say like, give me a really slick React component for relative date picking, and it'll just do it for you.
Yeah. And you want to have this engineer who's using it to think with you, right? And to feel the customer.
The last thing you want is an engineer to say like, well, I just built it to the requirements. It's like, no, right. Use your intuition, use your judgment. Like, and then what we find is, and so our engineering team has a huge amount of latitude to build features based on their intuition and judgment. And then if what they've done in kind of their first step is good enough and meets the user need, great, we're done. If what they've done, like in this case, just kind of following the API spec doesn't result in a super understandable user experience, then it takes a designer an hour to spin up a quick mock in Figma that handles a few different cases and then say, hey, let's just, the overall spirit of finding events with this time works perfectly. Let's just change the usability of this particular element.
We talked already about all this theory, right? You read all the books, then you know all the documents and artifacts you should create. And then you start working, experience and reality kicks in. And now you're looking back already at quite a successful past. What is one thing you wish you had learned earlier in your career?
So first, high level, I think frameworks are useless, but stories are very valuable. Stories are really valuable. Which is like, so whenever I read a post where I'm like, oh, this is the perfect acronym framework for designing product, I'm like, no, it's not. Like maybe it worked for you in one particular context based on how your organization develops product and the kind of product you have. But I love stories, even if they're stories from a very different domain, where it's like, oh, how did the Loom founders figure out that the Chrome extension was the right form factor for them? Or how did the DoorDash founders pivot from being, a local ads marketplace into food delivery? Like those stories are fascinating because they show you the thought process at a point in time of how someone overcame a product challenge. And then you build up this story bank of your own and of others where it's like, oh yeah, I remember that time where I was working on Gmail and we made this mistake. Let me see what of that applies to this new circumstance I'm in right now. Oh, maybe this applies, but that doesn't apply. So that's my number one learning is like ignore all frameworks, but listen to all the stories. Because that's where the value and insight often is. That being said, there are two books that have fundamentally changed the way I've worked on Relay. Neither of them are product management books. One is a user research and customer discovery book called The Mom Test. Have either of you heard of it or read it? The Mom Test totally changed my life. I don't love the title, The Mom Test, because when people hear the title, The Mom Test, they think, oh, they're trying to build it so simple that even a mom can use it and reinforce the stereotype that like moms are bad with technology, which is not the point of the book. The point of the book is when you're talking to people, they're going to try to be nice to you because we're all nice social beings. So if I go to you, Paul, and I say, Paul, I have this amazing idea for a startup. We're going to build a no-code AI agent builder. What do you think? What are you going to say to me? What are you going to say to me? You're going to lie to hurt my feelings. You're going to lie to not hurt my feelings. You're going to say, right. Oh, such a cool idea. I love it. Like, let me know when it launches. And so what the Mom Test teaches is, again, through stories, not through frameworks, through stories. There are frameworks to it, but the real value in the book, The Mom Test, is through stories of like, how could you ask better questions that could get to your answer? So there's this great story in the book where he's talking to a coffee bean entrepreneur who really is trying to sell this new coffee bean. And he's like, I'm going into all these coffee shops and I'm giving my pitch about my coffee bean and they're not doing it. And they're having coffee together, this story in the book. And so the author of the book calls over the waiter, the server at the coffee shop. And it's like, hey, is it okay if I really love this coffee. Is it okay if I ask you some questions about your beans? And the server's like, oh man, I don't know, but like, I'm sure my manager would be happy to speak to you, or the owner would be happy to speak to you. The owner comes out, sits at their table for an hour, tells them all about their bean procurement process and which beans they use and how they roast them and where they're happy with their suppliers and where they're not happy with their suppliers. And that, it turns out, is way, way more useful product feedback than me just coming in pitch. So the Mom Test totally changed how I approached the early days of Relay, from here's my cool new idea, cool new product, do you want to try it, to this much more exploratory, interview-based, story-based approach to understanding what people are doing every day and what their problems are. Amazing book. And it's so short. It's like a 3-hour audiobook. Like everyone should listen to that or read it right away. It's so good.
And if someone doesn't want to read it, we have an episode of the Product and Cake podcast talking only about the Mom Test.
Amazing. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Totally listen to that episode. It's such a good book. Really totally changed my perspective on user research, and especially in the early days when you're validating a product idea. The second book was Traction by Gabriel Weinberg, the founder of DuckDuckGo. And in this startup, I was very new to marketing. So in my previous startup, yes, I'd done a startup before, but in those days in 2013, you could just kind of launch in the App Store. And if you got featured in the App Store, that was all the marketing you needed to do. And people would just discover mobile apps in the App Store. That was the way you did marketing in those days. And maybe we could have done better, but that worked fine for us. And then at Google, when I inherited Gmail, we already had 800 million users. So like, it wasn't exactly a cold start problem in marketing. And so when I came to Relay, I was like, oh man, we have this idea. We validated it with Mom Test style research. I'm pretty confident that this is going to be useful to a small number of people. It's validated in that sense. How are we going to get it to more people? And I just had no idea at all. And so what the book Traction does is, again, it gives you stories about 19 different marketing channels, from getting featured on blogs to doing paid ads to doing SEO. And it gives examples for different companies for whom each of those go-to-market channels has succeeded. And then it gives you a methodology to say, here's how we recommend testing different channels. But again, from the book Traction, the framework part isn't the part that really spoke to me. Like, oh, here's how you should run a 1-month test with these different variants. Because like, you don't know if that makes sense for my business. Like maybe that's the right way to test it. Maybe that's not the wrong way to test it. But having 19 different channels enumerated with 2 to 3 stories backing up how a real company used each of those to succeed just totally opened my mind to different things that could end up working for us.
Yeah, I really like both of these books. And in topic of stories, one of my favorite podcasts is How I Built This with Guy Raz. Amazing stories. And I love the way the conversation flows. Everything about that podcast is amazing. So I also do recommend that.
I totally the one caveat I'll give there is there is a danger in only listening to the stories of people who are already ridiculously successful, because it's just natural that the story tends to get a little bit rewritten and sanitized over time. And I'm not saying these people are being disingenuous at all or lying at all. It's just like when you've already IPO'd, it's hard to remember what it was like 12 years ago when you couldn't get your first customer. And so I recommend everyone take those stories with a grain of salt. You like the beginning probably was messier than they're making it sound in the story.
Yeah.
You should be inspired by it, right? But you can never follow a path that was already walked.
Other people that are peers of mine or that I'm mentoring, they're like, oh, I've been working on this thing for 3 months and it's just not working yet. I'm like, 3 months? Nothing works after 3 months. Like, you're going to have way more failure before you have a modicum of success. Like, just keep going.
All right. Thank you for this. I personally really loved it. But before we finish the podcast, this is a small game that we play. It's a yay or nay game. I will say some statements and you can just tell me you're agreeing with them or not.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Right. So, the team removes a feature because it wasn't used, but no data was collected why it wasn't used.
Yay. Good thing to do.
Nice. Yeah.
Should I say more or just say yay?
Yeah, you can say more.
Yeah. So say more. I think an over-reliance on data paralyzes product teams. Everyone is looking for certainty. Oh, if we just put one more dashboard up in Mixpanel, if we just do one more deep analysis of our users, it's like, no one's using the thing. It's not working. Remove it. It's causing product debt. It's causing headache. Just remove it. If 10 users then email you and say, oh my God, I really needed that thing for something, then figure out how to meet their need in a way that's going to be applicable to more users.
Exactly. Yes. I fully agree.
We're way too paralyzed by data. Just move fast and you can always undo a bad decision.
Yep. And if it's not used, you can remove it and then build it better.
I mean, and the tricky thing is, I've rarely worked on experiences that are literally never used. It's almost always a gray area where it's like, ooh, this is being used far less than we hoped or expected. What does that mean? Does it mean that we didn't implement it well enough? Or does it mean that there's no underlying user need here? And that's where you just have to trust your product intuition to know if you overestimated the user need for this or if you've implemented it badly.
Yeah. I fully agree. All right. The second one. A product manager should approve every UX decision before it's implemented.
Nay, extreme nay, ultimate extreme nay. Oh my God, grind us down with the gears of bureaucracy and never ship product again. No. We have to empower our teams to ship and make decisions. Oh my gosh. Yep. I feel very strongly about that one.
Yes. And PMs should have a say in hiring engineers who will be working on their product.
Yay. So this kind of cuts across everything I'm saying, but like, I think people get overly trapped in functional mindsets. I am a PM. I am an engineer. I am a designer. It's like, no, we are all part of a product team that's trying to achieve something together. And that means that if I have a designer who's really good at product strategy, maybe I can ease off on that part of the thing. If I have an engineer who has really good product sense, I can ease off on that kind of thing. I have an engineer who's really focused on infrastructure and needs more hand-holding on design and product. We can give them that. And so I think every interview loop needs to be cross-functional. because that's what's going to make a holistically successful product team.
I really feel the startup spirit, right? And that's the way how great things come to life nowadays. Being inspired by stories and then enable the team to do something, right? And don't stick in the strict categories.
Do things. Action creates information. Action creates information. Like, action creates information way more than desk research. Like in that example of removing a feature, yeah, you could do 3 weeks of desk research trying to figure out everyone who's ever used the feature, hypothesize what they were using for, or you could just ask 5 people what they were using it for, or you could just remove the feature and wait to see who complains. Action will create information.
So what information we all will create right now is information about AI agents, right? Because we will all go to Relay.app, click as a test account and create our first AI agent. And we have your voice in our backend and do stuff.
Yes.
That is great. When we did that, where can people find you?
Yes. I'm on LinkedIn.
Really?
And I post 2 or 3 times a week on LinkedIn. And I try to post really practical, actionable use cases of either things that I am actually using AI for myself or that our customers are actually using AI for. And it cuts across different functions, but some will be relevant to product managers for sure. So follow me on LinkedIn, connect. And then I also, I every week on Wednesdays, I run these Build With Me sessions, and they're super fun. You come join me for an hour and we actually walk through the process of building an AI agent together end to end. You will emerge with something working at the very end. And so often, I'm the kind of person who I get intimidated by this like blank canvas of like, where do I start? Do I have to read a bunch of documentation? And so the guided sessions actually have like a really fun kind of collaborative. It kind of feels like going back to school. It's like a fun collaborative experience where we're all building the same agent together at the same time.
Cool. And I would also recommend to join your Slack channel of the Relay app, because your team is so engaged and answering immediately whenever you have any questions or you are stuck somewhere. That's very, very nice product experience.
I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, once you decide the product is for you, which I hope you'll decide, then yeah, we have quite an engaged Slack community, and you'll see me there as well.
Awesome. Jacob, thank you so much for joining our podcast. It was a pleasure talking to you, and looking forward to hear more.
Thank you both so much. This was really fun.
Thank you so much for joining. And for all of you listening, please, if you want to learn more, make sure you go on our LinkedIn page, follow the LinkedIn page. There is apparently a notification thingy even on LinkedIn that you can activate so you can get notified when new episodes are live.
One thing you could do, side note, you could build a Relay.app workflow that whenever a new episode is posted, automatically posts on LinkedIn for you or sends an email out to your newsletter. Yeah. That's what I use myself.
That will definitely happen. So you will see a lot more content after this episode.
Yeah.
Have a nice one.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining. Cool. Bye.
Like and share this podcast and tell everyone that you learned about something here, and make sure to give us 5-star rating. Thank you. Bye.